Hey guys, welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks so much for being here, for being subscribed. If you're not, go ahead and hit that button. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, hit that like button. It's like walking into the room and hitting that light switch. We just want to go ahead and brighten up the place. So let's get into this podversation/reality chat. It's kind of ironic. I definitely don't believe this was planned on both sides for this to happen this way, but I don't know if you realized Nene leaked. She was just recently interviewed by King on his podcast, and he released the first part. There's a second part that's being released, and listen, I have my issues with Carlos. Not that he cares, but there's a lot of people that has issues with Carlos, and I would say at the top, as far as we probably know, would definitely be Kandi. But even in my comment section, I see a lot of people that don't see it for Carlos at all. And now I'm just seeing so much more about him that just really is irritating. And this isn't even about Carlos, but I just wanted to say this briefly before I get into the main topic of my podversation/reality chat is the fact that Carlos, he doesn't really take accountability for a lot of things. And, it's funny because I'm going to mention this. There are definitely the issues when it comes to his reality shows that a lot of people feel like he doesn't spend a lot of time focusing on his own craft, his own productions. He spends a lot of time in either the past, if you want to, call it that, when he's talking about the Real Housewives, doing reviews on the Real Housewives shows, like on his podcast, YouTube channel. Listen, it's a free country. We are living in a capitalist society, those of us who are here in the United States, and, we're free to kind of do whatever we want as long as it's legal. But just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it. And I don't really have a lot of respect for him with what he's doing. And even though I did not comment on his channel, but I did do commentary on his interview that he did with Nene Leakes. I hate to use this word, but I just pretty much feel like he's a copycat. Carlos the copycat, not Carlos the king of reality. Carlos the copycat. Listen, when he was doing the nightcap or whatever he was calling the little show that he had on the OWN network last season, I felt like was copying Watch What Happens Live that Cohen has, his little talk show that he does. I don't see him doing that again. Now he's doing reality TV shows reviews. There's so many people on YouTube that's doing that. I don't do reality TV show reviews. I have so much respect for people that do that because, listen, that has to take a lot of time, especially for those who are sitting there taking notes. That's a lot of work. So I tip my hat to all of the reality show reviewers. I may do commentary here and there on some things that I see, but I definitely don't do reviews and I don't have time for it anyway. But he's doing that now. One of my favorite content creators, so I'm just going to call it out. One of my favorite content creators on YouTube that I have been following for years, Alexander Rogers. He's now following Alexander Rogers and he's created merch with allegedly, when we know, for those of us who do know, Alexander Rogers has had the Allegedly show for years. And I know that the word allegedly cannot be copyrighted. It's not something that anyone can actually own. But in the sense, I should say, of the Allegedly show, I just feel that Carlos is copying Alexander Rogers, and I don't have respect for it. So Alexander, he just recently put out some new merch and I love it. I just wanted to call that to attention because based on the conversation and the topic that I want to talk about when it comes to Kandi on Carlos, he seems to do things that are sneaky and underhanded and doesn't own up to it, doesn't take accountability for it, and I don't respect it. I've already spoken about my issues that I have with him when it comes to the men on his Love and Marriage, Huntsville, DC, Detroit shows, and how the majority of the marriages are not good examples of what someone should aspire to if marriage is something that people are aspiring to. But the men who are the husbands, for the most part, not every single one, so please don't think that's what I'm saying, but for the most part, they're trash. So I just wanted to talk about that because I was just shaking my head and I was like, is Carlos really doing this? But anyway, he interviewed Nene recently on his podcast. And Kandi, she was interviewed on TGIF. So again, I go back to saying, I don't think that the two platforms, meaning TGIF and Carlos, knew that either one was going to be interviewing the other. So it's just kind of ironic that this is coming out right now. And they asked Kandi something about Carlos. So I'm going to play this clip.
The time I'm like, they want to know if you would ever have a sit down with Carlos King.
Or what about Phaedra?
Absolutely not. No. And I don't even know why people always be trying to force that. You know,
good TV. Just because we messy and we nosy, that's all. That's the only reason.
To me, that is that boat done sailed a long time ago, and it ain't even no reason to bring it back. You know what I mean? I don't, people always act like I'm blocking her some kind of way. I'm not blocking her. She done been on multiple shows. She's on Married to Medicine right now. She done been on multiple TV shows. So I'm like, why everybody be trying to keep sending me and her together? I don't know. Right. Oh, I think I don't blame you. Kandi.
All right, guys. So you heard that. And you heard how she she tried to deflect because when Claudia brought up Carlos, she brought up Phaedra too, because she said, in the comments section, they're wanting to know if you would ever have a sit down with Carlos King. And previous to that, she was talking about, were there any housewives that you would want to bring back to the show? And Kandi didn't mention anyone particular that she would bring back, but she did mention Claudia. So when she was answering the question, she wouldn't really go into Carlos. And she even said, with Phaedra, absolutely not. But she was speaking on Carlos too. The thing with Carlos, which we know, Kandi revealed on the House of Aaron's YouTube channel when she did an interview, sit down with him, that Carlos did something behind her back she will never, ever have respect for him for, which was attempting to take her group's story for his own purposes, whatever he was going to do with it, whether it's going to be a made-for-TV movie or a documentary or a series or whatever. Don't really know. And she also mentioned that he was using her mom, having conversations with her mom, being sneaky and underhanded about it. And I mentioned this before, it's really dirty and low down because Carlos and her husband Todd, they used to work together. They did production together. They did Hollywood Divas. I believe they also did The Last 15, which was another reality show that was on the TV One channel. Claudia actually was one of the people that was on the show. New York, Tiffany Pollard from I Love New York. And a few other people, they were on that show. And I actually did like that show. I think that it only had one season. And I don't know if that's something that you can find on one of these apps on the Apple TV or Fire Stick right now. I don't know. But at any rate, she absolutely has nothing for Carlos at this time and never will. She says absolutely not. And ironically, they had to sit down with Kandi, and Carlos had the sit down with Nene. Now, I don't know what's going to come up in the second part. Of course, he left it with a cliffhanger. But there are some people that are saying Nene, she is the icon. She is the show. She is Real Housewives. I believe when Carlos was saying that stuff, listen, he definitely was flattering her. She undoubtedly has staked, her claim on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, because we hear about it whenever she gets an opportunity and chance to talk about it. But no doubt as well, she has been a huge, major part of the show and the show's success. But in my opinion, in that interview, I do believe, even though he wasn't calling names, because we know that he refuses to do that when it comes to Kandi, what he's doing is trying to pit Nene against Kandi, because he knows that there has been a lot of that tension there. He knows that. And he's a sneaky one. He's a sneaky little cat. Look, I understand Kandi and her just like not wanting to go any deeper into the answer when it comes to what was brought up about would she ever have a sit down with Carlos. If you listen, you heard if you saw her facial expressions, watch the interview. You see her facial expression. Her face answered the question, where she didn't really even need to go any deeper into the answer with regards to would she ever have a sit down with Carlos, because it's like, no, it's absolutely dead. It's done. I'm over it. And I completely understand. So yeah, Kandi answered that question with her face. And she, went off a little bit to talk more so about Phaedra than she did about Carlos as to the no and the absolutely not. But that definitely was meant for Carlos as well. So guys, you can let me know your thoughts about everything that we talked about on this conversation/reality chat today. What do you feel about Carlos and his copying ways and just so much focus on Real Housewives and other things versus his own reality and being the king of his own reality empire? And what are your thoughts on Kandi and her basically saying she's never going to see it for Carlos? Absolutely not. Thank you so much for being here, for liking and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until the next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and I'm going to say bye.